The most feared Soviet weapon of World War II, the Katyusha rocket launcher, was mounted on an American truck, a Studebaker, built in South Bend, Indiana. The Soviets could not build enough trucks to win their own war. They knew it. Stalin admitted it in writing. And the trucks that saved them came from Detroit. If American trucks were good enough to win a Soviet war, what were they doing to Soviet engineers watching from the other side of the Iron Curtain? Here are 10 American military trucks that answered that question across 5 decades, ranked from sheer industrial might to modular dominance. We start with number 10, the truck Eisenhower himself called one of the 5 tools that won the war. In the 10th place, the GMC CCKW, known to every Allied mechanic as the Deuce and a half, set a standard in mass production that no Soviet factory ever matched. Between 1941 and 1945, American assembly lines rolled out nearly 562,000 of these trucks, each stamped with a serial number and destined for convoys that kept the Western Front moving. General Eisenhower named the CCKW among the 5 most vital tools of victory alongside the bazooka and the atomic bomb. These trucks formed the backbone of the Red Ball Express, hauling fuel, ammunition, and food through mud, snow, and artillery fire. Maintenance logs from the front show that even after weeks on the road, the CCKWs kept rolling with minimal downtime, a reliability Soviet engineers could only study from afar. In the war's arithmetic, American industry didn't just build trucks, it built the logistical muscle that made every Allied advance possible. For the Soviets, the CCKW was an unattainable benchmark, a machine produced in such overwhelming volume that it redefined what an army on wheels could achieve. Number 9. The Studebaker US6 stands as the chassis that carried Stalin's most feared secret weapon, the M939 Katyusha rocket launcher, GAU, Order Number 12, 1943, made the US6 the standard mount for every new Katyusha battery, citing its cross-country endurance and payload margin that Soviet trucks could not match. Wartime shipping manifests confirmed that nearly 152,000 US6 trucks crossed the Atlantic to Soviet ports, each one a rolling contradiction to Soviet self-sufficiency claims. In a gesture rarely seen in the era of state secrecy, Lieutenant General Rudenko compiled a photo album of US6 Katyusha batteries in action and hand-delivered it to Studebaker officials. The album is now preserved in the Studebaker National Museum. Stalin himself sent a letter of gratitude in 1944, calling the US6 the backbone of our rocket artillery. Artillery officer Pavel Gurevich later admitted that no other truck could haul a full load of rockets across the steppe and keep the crew warm in the winter, and he called the Studa a gift from our allies. The evidence is forensic and irrefutable. The most iconic Soviet battlefield weapon owed its mobility and shock value to an American assembly line. In 8th place, the Willys MB Jeep arrived in Soviet hands as more than just a vehicle. It became a template for an entire class of Red Army machines. Soviet test officers at the Kubinka Proving Ground described the American Jeep as remarkably agile, reliable in mud and snow, and repairable with a hammer and pliers. The official trial transcripts, declassified decades later, show Soviet engineers measuring every angle and spring rate, searching for the secret behind the Jeep's cross-country speed and field serviceability. Over 52,000 Willys MBs were shipped east under Lend-Lease, flooding Red Army motor pools and frontline reconnaissance units. Within months, the Gorky automobile plant launched the GAZ-67, a Soviet-built derivative that mirrored the Willys silhouette and many of its mechanical details. By 1943, design notes from GAZ's engineers openly referenced the Jeep's layout, and Soviet adoption logs listed thousands of GAZ-67s as licensed field vehicles. The Willys MB forced a copycat response not through propaganda, but through undeniable battlefield performance. Its compact versatility, praised in internal Soviet reports, became the DNA for a generation of Soviet light utility trucks. The Jeep's legacy is not just in numbers, but in the very shape of Soviet military mobility that followed. Number 7. The GMC DUKW brought an amphibious advantage to the Red Army that Soviet engineers could only admire and later imitate. Delivered under Lend-Lease in a shipment of about 2,200 vehicles, the DUKW was more than a truck. It was a watertight, six-wheel drive vessel with a propeller drive and a retractable rudder, able to carry 2.5 tons of cargo straight from ship to shore, then roll inland without missing a beat. Wartime manuals detailed its sealed hull, bilge pumps, and the dashboard lever that let drivers adjust tire pressure on the fly, a technology the Soviets would not field for years. On the Eastern Front, DUKWs became lifelines at every river crossing, ferrying troops and ammunition across the Volga, Dnieper, and Danube, where Soviet trucks would have bogged down or sunk. The evidence of their impact is preserved not just in Allied after-action reports, but in the DNA of Soviet engineering itself. By 1952, the USSR rolled out the BAV-485, a near clone of the DUKW, produced through 1962 and deployed in every major river operation of the Cold War. Soviet technical archives show blueprints and field notes that mirror American designs almost line for line. The DUKW didn't just bridge rivers, it bridged a gap in Soviet capability, and the copy that followed is a silent admission. In amphibious logistics, the Americans set the standard, and the Soviets scrambled to catch up. Number 6. The M35A2 earned its reputation as the multi-fuel workhorse of the Cold War, a machine that rewrote the rules of battlefield logistics. Under the hood, the LD-465 engine stood apart. It was officially rated as a multi-fuel design and could burn diesel, kerosene, JP-8 jet fuel, or even gasoline, all without modification. An Army technical manual, TM92320200910, described a field procedure so simple that a crew could switch fuel types in minutes, using only color-coded filter cartridges and a basic chart. The result was a 2.5-ton truck that kept moving, no matter what the supply chain delivered. On a full load, the M35A2 could travel up to 500 miles, outlasting gasoline-only Soviet trucks that stalled at the first sign of fuel shortages. Production began in 1950, but it was the A2 variant, introduced in the 1960s, that cemented the truck's legend. Its 5-speed manual and 2-speed transfer case made it as reliable in the jungles of Vietnam as it was in the deserts of Iraq. Decades after its debut, Operation Iraqi Freedom Logistics reports from 2003 to 2011 still list the M35A2 in active service, logging 120,000 miles per truck with a readiness rate above 90%. Soviet engineers, bound to gasoline engines and rigid supply lines, could only watch as the American fleet adapted to every fuel crisis and kept rolling. The M35A2's endurance and flexibility set a standard the Soviet system never matched, widening the engineering gap with every mile. Number 5. The M809 series marks a decisive leap in American truck engineering, a leap the Soviets struggled to match even as they watched from the sidelines. At the heart of the M809 is the Cummins NHC 250, a 14-liter naturally aspirated diesel rated at 240 horsepower. This engine was not just about raw numbers, it was about harnessing torque for strategic highway mobility. The Army Technical Manual, TM923202060, spells out the specs: a 5-ton off-road payload, 55,000 pounds of towing capacity, and a highway cruising speed that let American convoys set the pace for NATO logistics from the 1970s through the end of the Cold War. M809's 5-speed manual transmission and dual-range transfer case gave it the flexibility to climb mountain passes or haul artillery across Europe's autobahns, something the gasoline-fueled Soviet ZIL-131 could not sustain without overheating or constant refueling. In convoy performance studies, the M809 routinely posted lower breakdown rates and higher average speeds, keeping supply lines fluid across hundreds of miles. Diesel power was not just a technical upgrade, it was a statement of intent, reshaping the logistics playbook for a generation. While Soviet engineers clung to older designs, the M809's endurance and highway dominance set a new benchmark, one that left the Red Army's truck fleet in the rearview mirror. Number 4. The M151 MUTT redefined tactical mobility with a design that Soviet engineers simply could not replicate. Born from the United States Army's demand for an airdroppable, multi-role light utility vehicle, the M151 was engineered around a monocoque frame and independent coil spring suspension, a radical departure from the leaf spring, live axle setup found on the Soviet YZ-69. United States Air Force load tables from the 1960s list the M151 as airdrop-ready, with 3 vehicles fitting on a single C-130 cargo pallet, each prepared for rapid deployment straight from the sky to the front line. In off-road trials, the MUTT consistently reached 65 miles per hour over rough ground, a pace the GAZ-69's rigid axles and body-on-frame construction could not approach. Army Technical Manual TM923-20218 details the MUTT's field agility, including a tight turning radius, high speed stability, and the ability to absorb terrain shocks that would have crippled earlier designs. Soviet test reports from Kubinka, by contrast, document the GAZ-69's tendency to lose traction and break leaf springs under similar loads. The M151's modularity and air transport compatibility were not just technical flourishes, they were the backbone of a rapid insertion doctrine that let American forces project power anywhere, anytime. In the Cold War contest of mobility, the MUTT set a bar that Soviet engineers acknowledged but never cleared, and the archival record makes it plain: tactical agility was an American export the Red Army could only chase. Number 3. The CUCV M1008 represents a Cold War paradox, a military truck engineered for war, yet so deeply rooted in American commercial hardware that it became the ultimate mechanic's companion. Beneath its hood, the naturally aspirated Detroit 6.2-liter diesel V8 borrowed nothing from Soviet designs and everything from the civilian Chevrolet K30, delivering 130 horsepower through a TH400 automatic transmission, a Dana 60 front axle, and a Detroit Locker rear axle. This was not a bespoke military engine, but a lesson in logistics. Every part, from alternators to brake pads, matched what a local shop could source off the shelf. Army Technical Manual TM9-2320-289 cataloged these commonalities, making the M1008 a field-repairable workhorse rather than a depot queen. The CUCV's design philosophy was simple: trust the vast American parts network, not a fragile supply chain. In the 1980s, Soviet engineers still relied on carbureted gasoline engines and proprietary parts. While the M1008's diesel could idle for days on low-grade fuel, its mechanical injection system immune to electronic failure. Today, that same philosophy pays dividends for civilian owners. M1008s routinely appear at surplus auctions, often fetching between $6,000 and $10,000, less than the cost of a used compact car. For a generation of owner-operators, the CUCV is more than a relic. It's a living argument for American mechanical sovereignty. The truck's afterlife on ranches, farms, and backroads is proof that the boundary between military innovation and civilian utility was erased by design. In an era where Soviet surplus vanished with the AMUR factory's bankruptcy, the M1008 endures, restored, repainted, and still turning wrenches in the hands of those who value simplicity and self-reliance. Number 2. The M939 series rewrote the rules of military convoy movement with a single, decisive upgrade: the Allison MT654CR automatic transmission. The Allison automatic changed everything. In an era when Soviet truck drivers still wrestled with unsynchronized gearboxes and double-clutch routines, the M939 5-speed automatic turned every operator into a qualified driver in a fraction of the time. Army training studies from the 1980s document a 30% reduction in driver qualification hours across the fleet, a shift that rippled through every logistics battalion. The numbers are as clear as a declassified readiness report. 44,590 M939 trucks rolled out between 1982 and 1989, each one engineered to keep convoys moving at tempo, regardless of the driver's prior experience. Doctrine changed to match the hardware. Convoy commanders could now rotate personnel more freely, maintain higher average speeds, and reduce the risk of transmission failures that had plagued earlier manual shift trucks. The impact was not just theoretical. Maintenance records show a marked drop in clutch replacements and transmission-related breakdowns, translating to more trucks on the road and fewer sidelined in-depot queues. The Allison automatic was not a luxury. It was a force multiplier, allowing American supply lines to adapt, surge, and recover faster than any Soviet formation relying on manual gearboxes. Where Soviet engineers clung to the old doctrine of more training and more mechanical complexity, the M939 delivered ergonomic innovation straight from the assembly line. The result was a truck that made operator error almost obsolete, and readiness rates a matter of design, not luck. As the Cold War entered its final act, the M939's automatic transmission became the silent engine behind America's ability to outpace, outlast, and outmaneuver a rival still stuck in the era of manual labor. The Humvee redefined what a military truck could be when it rolled out in 1985. Its modular architecture set a new standard. 17 mission kits could be swapped in and out, transforming the same base vehicle into a cargo hauler, ambulance, command post, or even a mobile missile launcher. No rewiring, no specialty tools, just a system built for rapid adaptation. Department of Defense records confirm over 280,000 Humvees produced, a number that eclipses anything from Soviet or Russian plants. This wasn't just mass production, it was a global phenomenon. More than 60 countries operate Humvees, from NATO partners to former Warsaw Pact states, each supported by a sprawling network of interchangeable parts and field upgrade kits. Manuals and documentation made it possible for mechanics in places as far apart as Kansas and Kuwait to keep these vehicles running with the same confidence. Transportability was another leap. Airlift doctrine shifted overnight. 2 Humvees fit side by side in a C-130 Hercules, 6 in a C-117 Globemaster, and up to 15 in a C-5 Galaxy. This meant rapid deployment became routine, not a logistical gamble. Soviet trucks never matched this combination of modularity and certified airlift compatibility. The Humvee's independent suspension, wide track, and low silhouette gave it off-road agility, while its diesel V8 engine delivered fuel flexibility and range that earlier vehicles couldn't touch. Army procurement documents and field manuals made the intent clear: replace the patchwork of Jeeps and trucks with a single, adaptable platform that could handle any mission profile. Decades later, the Humvee's influence is everywhere. Surplus models are auctioned to private owners, ranchers, and collectors, their modular design and legendary durability still valued far from the battlefield. The production numbers, the global footprint, and the enduring supply chain all point to a philosophy that shaped modern military logistics: build for every mission, scale for the world, and design for the future. The Humvee remains the benchmark, its legacy written in contract ledgers, battlefield reports, and the roads of over 60 nations. Across all 10 machines, one record stands unsealed. American military trucks did not just move armies, they forced the Soviets to rewrite their own engineering playbook. Stalin and Khrushchev admitted the gap, and Soviet blueprints quietly followed. These are not just numbers, they are a verdict on mechanical ingenuity. And today, their legacy is not buried. It is still drivable. History proves it. American trucks set the standard. Which legacy model would you want in your garage?